Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Helen Allen. I'm the director of the Winter Show. I'd love to, thank you. Love to welcome you all here. We are delighted to be able to put on this important art fair, which is starting, or we're now midway through. This is our 68th edition, and as many of you may know, we typically take place at the Armory in January. But because of we had to pivot. We're delighted to host you in the former Barney's here at 660 Madison, and it seems only fitting that we are here in this wonderful, iconic New York shopping space, just minutes from actually all three of these of these iconic shops, and we're delighted to welcome you today for a wonderful discussion about the heritage and history and collection of antique jewelry. And we're delighted to have the author with us today, Beth Bernstein. She is a phenomenal expert in the field, and we'll be speaking with our panelists and exhibitors, Ben Macklow, Peter Schaefer, and Carrie Emberman. You may find Ben and Carrie on the 4th floor and Peter on the 5th floor. So we invite you to explore the show following. And Beth, thank you so much. Thank you all.
Hi, everyone. So this book, you will see as you walk out, you'll be able to get signed copies. But I actually only received the first review copy about a week ago, was it? And after 2 years, because of the pandemic, it just went through so many different challenges. But anyway, I think it's a little bit different than any other antique books out there. It gives tips of the trade. It talks about how to wear things in a modern context. It goes from the 1700s to the 1920s, so it's purely antique. And we have quotes from incredible dealers who are very knowledgeable. They're experts in their field. They usually carry a wide range of different periods, but possibly specialize in one. And today we're with three of New York's finest. So I'm so happy to have Ben and Peter and Carrie on the panel with me today. I'm going to be asking them some questions as they are all quoted in this book, with pictures of their jewelry in this book, which is another thing I wanted to say, that the pictures we showed in this book they're museum quality pieces, but they're not for museums. They're actually pieces that can be found on the market, or similar to pieces that can be found on the market today. We talk about how to shop an antique show, how to shop at auction, how to mix and match different time periods, just a whole bunch of things. And I'm going to start asking some questions now that you know a little bit about the book. And I'm going to put it down for now. And I'm going to start off with asking Carrie. I'm going to ask Carrie and Peter this question because I think I asked them both this question in the book. How would you define your style as a collector or a starter collector? How would you define your style in antique collecting?
My own personal style?
Well, no,
Or
as a collector. And you can put in a little of your own personal style, because you have very good personal style,
Oh,
Carrie.
thank you. Sometimes I get it right. I'll try and stick to the topic, but first and foremost, one of the things that I think can't be glossed over is that fine jewelry or high jewelry, because it's intrinsically valuable material, could be arbitrary, but gold, precious metals, platinum, precious jewels, they take money to buy. So I think there's a lot of people that are either intimidated by price points, or they say, that's never going to be attainable for me. My mother, who owned the business before me, when I was a kid, she would give me a quarter, and I would go to all the tag sales, and I was probably the only 5-year-old walking around with big Miriam Haskell clip-ons. But collecting is not something that you can really teach. You either have to have a passion for it, and I just think I don't know whether it happened through osmosis, I don't know whether it happened because it was in my DNA, but I buy what I like, and I buy what speaks to me. And specifically, I don't think that any of us could do what we do if we were not buying things that were utterly singular. I am not interested, although I understand that it's an iconic piece, I'm not necessarily interested in collecting love bracelets. I understand why it's important. I understand that it's probably like the #1 biggest selling piece of jewelry of all time, but in terms of when I'm building a collection, I don't want what everyone else has. I want something that someone looks at and goes, I've never seen that before. So that's my own personal.
I think that your point is incredibly well taken, because we live in this era where the very idea of luxury has been turned on its head. The only true luxury now is something that nobody else can have. And I'm not talking about the enforced scarcity that Hermes and the other, great luxury brands have done. I'm talking about the fact that it doesn't exist anywhere else, that it was only made a very few times. Maybe over the years, through war and damage and theft and everything, there's only one left, or you've never seen it before. That, to me, is the most exciting thing, because in this era when we can click and click and click, to actually be able to hold something in your hand and say, I'm the only person in the world to possess this, that's a real mark of personal taste. And that's a great achievement. And I mean, when we were rebuilding our whole marketing over the last couple of years, we wanted to put that idea front and center through education. And on our website, every single piece has how a woman's going to wear it. It's photographed on a woman so you can get a sense of it. We talk about where it tries to fit historically. And for some people, that matters more than anything. For some people, it doesn't matter at all. They just want to make sure that it looks nice on them. And I think, to Carrie's point, it really is about your personal journey. And I always encourage people, like with our specialty that's a little different from other people's, Art Nouveau, it was the birth of the merchant class. 1870 to 1914, people were moving out of the farm economy and into an urban economy where they were making a wage. And so they were treating themselves with things maybe for the first time in their family's generational history. And so the jewelers responded to that at the top of the realm, selling to the kings and queens. And the robber barons were Tiffany and Cartier and Boucheron and Van Cleef and all those people. But you take 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 steps down, and there's still extraordinary quality being made. You go into silver jewelry from the Art Nouveau period. It's wonderful and very collectible. And today, a really beautiful piece could be had for $500.
Well,
it's special.
we kind of look at things slightly differently.
Yeah, Peter, I wanted to ask you specifically, because you said something wonderful in the book about how when we talked about defining style, and we had a conversation about it before, about trying on the different styles, and then, you think you're going in for one thing, and then so can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, we often have people come in and they say, I've got 10,000 or however much money, that they want to buy something and sell me something. And we say, no, wrong question. One of the simplest ways would be to go to almost any museum that has a jewelry collection, wander about and look at the pieces, let your head swing left, right, left, right. Don't stop and examine pieces. Then you go for lunch, and then you sit down and discuss with whomever you're with what it is you remember, and then you go back and look at the pieces. It's the same here at the antique show. You can go to the 3 of us or any of the other jewelers around, and you look and see what hits you in the solar plexus. And that's more likely where you're going to collect than Ben or Carrie or myself telling you this is what you should collect.
Yeah, that's a great point. Ben, you want
I
to?
think he's so right. Louis Cartier famously quipped, "We make jewelry for women who wear clothing." And, it seems silly, but as styles have changed and the way people live, we're much more casual now than even a few years ago, what my customers are looking for has changed a lot. I'm noticing it's sort of going in 2 different directions. They're the people who are really trying to get just sort of the happy, wear everyday gold, gold and diamond, gold with a little bit color. But conversely, we're having people looking for pieces that are much more collectible and not necessarily as flashy, but really special pieces that have some sort of unusual historical quality to them because it hits them in the solar plexus.
Which leads me into the next topic, because I was just going to ask you, because I'm going in order of the time periods for this panel, but I was going to ask you, how does a woman engage in Art Nouveau jewelry in a modern context today? Because it was so rebellious and it was so artistic. It was really done for art's sake back then.
I think it's a good question, Beth. You know, Art Nouveau jewelry was made as a reaction to the commercialism of jewelry. You'll never see, or almost never see, a very, very fine gemstone as the centerpiece of a piece of Art Nouveau jewelry. René Lalique would use white zircon instead of diamonds. Frederic Boucheron would use pale aquamarines instead of sapphires. And so, you know, there's always been this rebellious spirit about it, but it's also, we live very differently now. Women in the Art Nouveau period who really believed in sort of the style of it wore their hair long and parted in the middle and swept over their ears. So if you say to me, Ben, I want to collect Art Nouveau earrings, I'm going to say, tough luck, there aren't any. It's a period where there were no earrings made, which is so disappointing, of course, because the movement of the style lends to it. To your point, you can start buying Art Nouveau jewelry as a modern person based upon your taste. Oh, hey, hello. So these are all things from us. And as it says here, these are all pieces from Maclo Gallery, a few of which we've actually placed with museums and special collections. But you could imagine that a piece like this one by Eugène Fayatre is really, it's a pendant. Women wear pendants all the time. You don't have to think too hard about this. You put this on, you wear an open neck blouse, and you see how it feels. And then you have to figure out how you want to adorn yourself with it. How do you want to layer things? But these are show-stopping pieces, and even the inexpensive pieces are quite opinionated. So if you're the type of person who has very strong opinions, Art Nouveau jewelry is probably for you. If you're not, and you want your jewelry to always go with your clothing, Art Nouveau jewelry is probably not for you. And that's okay too.
I saw some people who were wearing the 80s beaded jackets coming here to the show. And some of them were wearing Art Nouveau jewelry. And you can mix and match. That's one of the things with that or Art Deco or Revival or anything like that. People love just to mix and match. And you don't need to have a specific style.
Well, that's, where the modernism comes in today, where you can mix all different types of styles. One of the last chapters in the book is about how to mix different time periods, different styles, because with modern clothes and... Oh, can you hear me now?
Two masks on, you really have to enunciate.
Okay, thank you for telling me. So one of the last chapters in the book is all about mixing different styles to create a modern look for you and for who you are today. So, and in a modern, in a contemporary context. My next question, is this better?
It's a little better, yeah.
Okay. My next question is for Carrie. We had talked about this once before at a presentation that you had given, and I always remembered this, that you had talked about archaeological revival jewelry, and you felt that it was very modern with today's clothes, and I wanted you to talk about that a little bit more.
Okay, once again, I'll try and, long story long. The thing about archaeological, and there's under the rubric of archaeological revival, you have neoclassical, you have Etruscan, you have Egyptian, because anytime that they're discovering any of these, they're going to digs, there's several Egyptian revivals. And when Castellani, who was sort of the first, I don't want to say he's the first revivalist jeweler, but he was offered the opportunity to sort of look into this tomb that the Vatican let him look into, and therein were all of these amazingly sophisticated techniques. I think it turned out that the way in which the gold was being worked was much more sophisticated than what had previously been thought. What I love about, and not just, I have a necklace on my booth, which is a sort of a grand tour Egyptian revival necklace with all of these scarabs. It's a whole shoot and match. It's not an easy piece to wear. This is not my first necklace. It's not, but it is a work of art and it tells a story. When you get into a deep dive in archaeological, I think sometimes it becomes a little bit, I don't want to use the word kitschy, but perhaps overly whimsical. But then when you, after the tomb of Tutankhamun, I think is 1922, you see Cartier start doing all of their amazing Egyptian revival, and it looks clean and modern and unplaceable and absolutely just beautiful. And what I love in general about Etruscan or Egyptian or the Viez bracelets over there, sort of a little bit Renaissance revival, is that the best jewelry to me looks unplaceable. So even though I'm yammering on about Egypt and all of these things, the most wearable things are to me, there's the bracelet in the corner that's a Victorian, just classic Victorian bracelet. The middle one.
Looks like it could be 1970s
Yes,
Gucci.
it could be, and frequently, and I'm always happy to give anyone an education, what little education, the more I know, the less I know, but people frequently come into the shop and they're like, is this Gucci? Is it Chanel? But what they really don't realize is that all of those makers are just recycling the same themes in the absolute tedious postmodern dilemma of how do we come up with new themes? And we don't. We just recycle the same old ones. So this necklace, which was done by Emil Ferdinand Dahl, is actually kind of like a Nordic Viking revival piece. It's wonderful. And it looks so clean, so modern. And the techniques used to make all of these pieces really don't exist anymore. I mean, they exist. One could figure out how it was done, but the average jeweler working today doesn't possess this skill set, not by a long shot. Even things like granulation, which were super common for this time period, it's not that it's gotten lost on in the shuffle, but now we see it so much that we just think, oh, that's modern. But anyway, I hope that sheds some light on.
No, that totally answers my question. But also,
Amazing.
when we have it, you did a good job.
Answered the question.
And I just don't know my
Beth, if
favorite.
I could just interject, to Carrie's point, every society in the history of the world thinks it's the most modern society in the history of the world. So the jewelry that's made then, even revivalist jewelry, is supposed to feel like a modern interpretation of it. And I think the Victorians, and I'm using archaeological revival, we'll just say the Victorians
Yes.
as casting a wide net, really believed they were creating the future. Again, you have to get into the mind of what was happening during the Industrial Revolution. These relatively small countries, France, England, Belgium, the Netherlands, had outsized influence across the
dictating
entire
everything.
globe. And so they were very, very much imposing their vision of the world. And so this jewelry is very confident, it's very self-assured. There's large, polished surfaces. This was jewelry that was meant to be seen. This is not the jewelry that was meant to be sort of shied away from or just to sort of blend into the fabric. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think it's important to think about that, to always think about the jewelry is made at a time for people who live in that moment, and it reflects who they are and how they perceive themselves in the world.
Well,
And
to
just
Ben's,
Quickly, to your point, it's one of the few times that jewelry actually becomes somewhat democratic. So because you do have a merchant class that's all of a sudden able to buy jewelry and wear it out, it's not just reserved for the nobility. You start seeing things that don't just look like things you've seen in paintings. You see whimsical things, you see, witty things, you see strong-looking things, but they're not they're driven by a future perspective and a more democratic mindset about who owns jewelry.
to a point that was made a while ago, for example, the Etruscan revival, and you were talking about the granulation. Even Castellani did not know how to do granulation the way the real Etruscans did a granulation. So as times went on, they had to learn their own methods, and as they do today. So with each, and nothing's new, and so it just keeps, turning around on itself. My next question, after I dropped off my papers, but I think I know it, is to talk to Peter about Art Deco jewelry. And I have a specific question about Art Deco jewelry because I find this very interesting. I'm a collector of different periods of jewelry, but Art Deco seems to be, because it was modern of its time, it seems to continue to be modern and never really go out, where like sometimes Georgian jewelry is out of style for a while, even though I love it. But Art Deco jewelry seems to never go out of style. Is there a reason for that, Peter? And can you talk
I
to
think
us about that?
there is a very strong reason. Art Deco has strong lines, has good color, and sometimes not always the very best stones, the way you were talking about with Art Nouveau. But the pieces can be worn upside down, right side up, in the hair, whatever, and they can be worn with absolutely any outfit. Even these beaded jackets I was talking about, which you wouldn't imagine that anybody could wear jewelry with, but they were. And so Art Deco would be a very great contrast for a beaded jacket, specifically.
And these are all of your pieces, and I'm looking at the coral and onyx and, or is it coral and enamel? I can't tell in the picture, and diamond ring. But I could wear that like with what I'm wearing today. It's just so modern.
And there's, just take that watch, for instance, on the right. You're not going to see that being done. Maybe it is being done, I don't know. But the crystal, it ain't crystal. It's a sapphire, which is one of the things in a deco piece that makes it jump into the next category.
And just the way things were made at that time period, you can tell by the weight of them, the feel of them. When we talk about new collectors who are just learning, we talk about feeling the piece and touching the piece and getting the feel of like how light the piece was. It wasn't cast like it is today. So can one of you speak
We
more?
have some clients, and we see them.
I'm happy for you.
We have one or two, and all of a sudden they pick up a piece, and they're wandering around, and they don't put the piece down. And sometimes when they're walking out the door, I say to them, "Can I have the ticket, please?" And then you send them a bill. But that's something that a client has to do. They pick it up, and they really don't want to put it back down. Yeah. And they want to hold on to it. And that's a very important part of getting you hit in the solar plexus with it.
Okay.
To your point, this is talismanic culture, right? That's the only reason to adorn yourself, is to feel like you're imbuing yourself with power, some sort of power, protection, love. These are amulets, and they have been and continue to be since the beginning of time. And so that the thing that's been the greatest challenge to me during these last number of years, even before COVID, is as we've migrated digitally so much more, so many of these decisions are being made by end users without ever holding the piece in hand first, without ever seeing how it fits on the shoulder or on the wrist or on the ear. And while sometimes it still turns out okay, I feel like that's really missing something. And if anybody's watching this, I encourage you, get off your tushy and go and actually see the pieces before
Well,
you buy them.
you know that jewelers are the world's second oldest profession. When they took a seashell or something or other, or a grain of sand, and they mounted it on a thong around the neck or something or other like that, we do go back. But as I said, the second oldest.
Thank you for that, Peter. But I want to now ask the group two questions. What does everyone see right now as trending in antique jewelry, like the most predominant trends in antique jewelry? Can we get Carrie to answer first?
This is a question, I'll just be straightforward. This question mystifies me. And it's only because, and we're at Bergdorf's, if you ever happen to catch me there on a Wednesday, where I'm usually going like, how do I get out of here? There are several questions that I'm asked all the time. One is, what's trending? And we have never purchased things that way. I don't think I could do what I do by following trends because A, I'm not very good at tracking trends, but B, things like brooches, like I grew up in the tradition of my mother, so she was very, in the 80s, it was all about suit dressing. So you'd wear the earrings, you'd wear the necklace, I have all these strange little rules for myself, like I'd never wear earrings with a necklace. It's just personal. It's so deeply personal, and I never understand. The second thing I never understand is when people come through and they say, I don't need this, I don't need that, and I always just say, you don't need any of it. You have to just love it. I'm a miserable salesperson because I can't imagine actually talking to someone about something like a trend. I mean, I understand like when Sex and the City first came out and everyone rushed in, and we also deal in costume jewelry, so they came in and everyone was buying these big costume brooches going like, they're back. And I was like, for us, they never really went anywhere because
Exactly.
because when you see a beautiful Art Deco brooch or a pair of diamond clips, I think some of the hardest jewelry to wear is the most sophisticated because intrinsic in being able to wear these things that are unusual, you have to have confidence. If you are not a confident wearer or you're not confident in your own taste, you don't have to be a confident person per se, but to know thyself, was it Plato? Was it Socrates? Who was it? Know thyself. Know what you like, and then just follow your own path. I mean, I would personally love to own a pair of Deco diamond clips because I think that that's like the final frontier of jewelry is clip wearing because it takes a lot of confidence to do it, and it takes thought. You have to, figure out which pair you like.
You have to outplan your outfit. Just
You have
like
to
Cardi was
plan your outfit. You can't just roll out of bed like I do most days. But I am always, I guess my inclination is don't go for the trends. Don't do it. Find out what you like.
But before we, when I'm talking about the trends,
Okay, well, I'm sure that there is something
No,
that's
wait,
trending.
hold on. Hold on. I was not talking about specific trends like, okay, we're going to do the 5-stone ring or, the.
I mean,
brooches.
snakes always.
Right.
These
snakes-
ones on my hand, I was in the midst of
Snakes always.
selling them
I
to
agree.
someone, and I just said,
If you've
Not
got
today.
enough confidence, you can buy an enormous brooch, and then during the day, you wear it 3/4 hidden by the collar, and at night you take it out and put it out. But you've got to be, as Kara said, you've got to have the confidence to be able to carry that off.
Okay, so when I was talking about trends, I wasn't really talking about the exact pieces of the trends. I was talking more about the time periods that are trending right now in jewelry.
I think.
Ben, oh, sorry, Carrie.
Well, Art Deco is always we used to do the show with 3 cases of antique, of Deco diamond jewelry because people were going to black tie things. They were going to cocktail. They were, Art Deco jewelry is very understandable to most people because the lines are clean. People are like, ooh, diamonds. Now that the culture has shifted a little bit and perhaps there's less dress events, less things like that, I really try and listen, and we're trying to move into wearable jewelry. And by that I mean just something that you put on and you feel like, I am a person. I mean, I'm sure Deco is never going out, not anytime soon. And I'm sure that there's something that's trending.
Well, lovers of antique jewelry are the wrong people to ask this question of, and the reason is we don't sell multiples. The only way to know if something's trending is when you see the SKUs keep running through. That's just from a commercial point of view. But from a taste point of view, what I'm seeing is, again, this sort of thing where there's this great desire to have special pieces, to have something that you think, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm the custodian of this. Certainly, to Carrie's point, we're selling lots of wearable jewelry. My mom was the first, I think, person in New York City in the estate jewelry world to really love retro jewelry, which is post-1938, let's say, 1938 to 1950. And she loved it because she was a working woman, and she could wear this big, voluminous gold jewelry all the time. And she could dress it up in the evening with a bigger pair of earrings or whatever, but it made sense to her as a working woman. And as New York has sort of gone into this hermit mode of the last 2 years, things that are smaller and smaller become more popular, and now I think we're starting to come out of it. And I'm seeing this because I'm seeing a lot of women buying retro jewelry for me again, which is, I think, a very encouraging sign for the future of our city. I just have to say, as random as that sounds. So I think there are these two things. I have not seen the return of heavy diamond jewelry yet at all. I'm going to be completely frank. I haven't seen it at all. Maybe in other parts of the country that weren't quite so affected by COVID. But here in New York City, I'm finding those two things really unusual. Antique jewelry, before 1920, and then retro jewelry that's got a very strong, very simple statement to be made. That's what I'm seeing as a trend.
If we have a large diamond brooch, it's fairly easy to sell to a specific client, but it has to be that much higher than it used to be in quality or condition or whatever, because everybody now, they want to be, as we've all said, they just want to be individuals.
I'll just speak a little bit towards trends. Not a trend I like. Signed all day long. That is not interesting to me because there's so many
Ditto.
beautiful pieces that were made by the same houses who are producing for the big guys. They're producing for Boucheron, Cartier, Van Cleef. All of the big houses they're not just having their own little dedicated workshops. They use a number of workshops throughout France, but like it or not, signed jewelry, I don't think is going anywhere anytime soon, and I think it's because I think that's much more of a status-driven thing. I think that...
But the signature has to be real. Please. Make sure you're dealing with reputable people, because you can see things that are signed, Cartier, Schmartier, and besides which, you can't, I don't think you can sell a brooch, or you can't, or pendant, and have them turn the mark out front. The mark is in the back. So you're buying the object. That's the important thing. If it happens to be signed and it's a real signature, good.
Well, we do talk about that in the book, about how to Carrie's point, how many of the houses many of the jewelers who made the houses jewelry also made unsigned jewelry that was just as beautiful. And I've seen a lot of it at auction, in my many years of covering auctions and antique fairs. So I think that's a wonderful point to make. Signed jewelry is also always going to be more expensive than unsigned jewelry, and you can get just as good a piece, which Ben and I have talked about. And I do have one last question for the group, because I don't want to run over and keep everybody from shopping your wonderful booths. But what I wanted to ask was, what's the best way to shop? Okay, you're all here doing an antique show. You're all around here with stores. What's the best way to shop an antique show?
Exactly what Peter said. Walk around, feast your eyes, take a minute, take a cup of coffee, and say, what do I need to go back and try on? But you have to try the pieces on. And then really spend some time. And if you care about learning, make sure that you've got somebody across the aisle from you who cares about you knowing. And
Don't forget, jewelry is a mobile. It's supposed to have the breath of life in it, under it. So that's very important. As you say, if you go back and you look and say, oh, yes,
Oh, I would also say that reputable dealers matter. There's a reason why my clients aren't going to like Round Top or Brimfield and like picking through the stuff. You need to be educated about what you're buying. Some people don't care. That's fine. But every piece that I sell, I'm married to for the rest of my natural born life.
we
So
only sell 95% of an object.
yes, so it's in my best interest to place things in good homes, and it's also in your best interest to educate yourself about what it is you might like, because then you can, it's only to your benefit to become more conversant in the whatever you're
It's
interested
like having a great therapist, you know. You need to have somebody who speaks your language. So if you come to me and I don't speak to your language, you go to Peter. And if it's not that, you go to Carrie, because you have to find somebody. And often what happens with my collectors is I'll tell them after they become a customer, I said, listen, I don't own all the jewelry in the world that you're going to want to buy, but I want to make sure that anything you buy is great. So I have no pride of you or jealousy. Please, if you see something somewhere else and you're thinking about it, feel free to reach out to me, send me a photo and say, what do you think? And 9 times out of 10, I tell the person why they should purchase it. It's very rare for me to say, stay away. But I think that becomes part of the relationship. And it's also the fun, right? We don't want to go through this life alone. Part of jewelry, again, is about connecting you to somebody else. Whether you buy it for yourself, you're still connected to the person who made it, you're connected to the person who you bought it from, and then you're connected to the people who admire it on you. And so I think that's part of what is special about dealing with people like us.
Well, that's why the three of you are in the book, because you're all very reputable, and I have shelved enough antique shows. I've actually haven't been to Brimfield in years because it's scary for me. But this show and the three of you have amazing merchandise, museum quality, and I want to.
You know something that the three of us will do?
What will you do, Peter?
I don't know. It's a lot of people, dealers, they won't admit that they don't know something, and they have to say something. And we have no objection whatsoever in telling somebody we don't know. We'll try and find out, or we'll ask somebody else in the field. That's very important in choosing a jeweler.
Well, thank you so much for being on the panel. Thank you so much for contributing
Thank you for having
Congratulations
us.
on your book, Beth.
the book, and
Looks great.
for being so patient with the book coming out, because we know how long it took. So I really appreciate you doing all this for me, and it's been wonderful knowing you for all of you for so many years, and having you do this with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beth.
So I would also just like to thank our panelists. Beth, thank you so much. This was a tremendous learning opportunity for me. Even though I get to hang out with you guys, I learned a lot today. So thank you all for being here. I also just want to thank you all for being here, because one of the things that's so important is that you come to these lectures, we get a chance to learn so much, but what's even more important from the East Side House settlement perspective is that you come here, your ticket purchase at the door helps support one of the most needed community service organizations in New York City. So your $30 actually goes to really help transform lives and make sure that people are being fed, that they're being educated, that they have after-school programs, and that they've got workplace development. So thank all of you as well, okay?
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you guys so much. It's great to have you all here.
Okay.